Okay, so who's smarter than Texans? So I live in Texas, uh, and you know Texans we're real proud of our state. So I'm going to talk about how we're performing on the TIMS and the NAEP, the crosswalk that IES recently released, and also talk about some post-secondary outcomes, and then use sort of Texas as an anchor because we like to talk about ourselves. Like New Yorkers, yes, exactly. Whoa, I don't know what just happened to my slide, but I have been accused of having the longest email signature and the shortest emails ever. So these are the roles that I hold at UT Austin. But as I'm known in the Capitol in Austin as the blogger, so we probably can just skip all of these fancy titles. So let's get right into it. What have you heard about U.S. learning outcomes compared to the world? And we just saw a wonderful slide. I bet you that came from Fox News. I'm not really sure. Okay. We talked about the international comparisons of the PISA. So these talks really dovetail perfectly. On the PISA test, what we saw was the U.S. performance in 2012 at 36 in math, 28th in science, 24th in reading. But one of the important things to also note about the PISA, while Shanghai was the only Chinese area to be sampled, in the United States, our sample was derived from Connecticut, Florida, and Massachusetts. And I also think that's an important part of the conversation. So now let's talk about the NAEP and TIMS crosswalk. And I have too many M's in my TIMS, so I apologize for that. The IES released a crosswalk so that we could look at the NAEP relative to the TIMS. Now, what's interesting is that, how many of you have read this here in the audience? Just a few. And you are about to find out why the media did not cover this. They didn't cover it because, actually, it's pretty darn good news. So what you see here with the fancy yellow highlighter that I've used is that Texas actually placed 26th in the nation. You see the top 10 are Massachusetts, Vermont, Minnesota, New Jersey, New Hampshire, and that is on the math. You can see the bottom states are Louisiana, Georgia, California, Oklahoma, Tennessee. How about the science? And this is very difficult to read from this distance, but you see the top 10 are Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire. These are the usual characters. And in just a moment, we're going to take a little sidetrack, and you'll understand what I mean in just a second. And then Texas is ranked 35th in the nation. So you see here, let's just recap. Texas is ranked 26th in math in the United States and 35th in science. So remember I told you that we were going to take a little sidetrack? We are taking a little sidetrack because what you're seeing here is a sidetrack. What you see here is students first. This is Michelle Rees thinking about our top 10 states internationally. She has given our best 10 states a D, an F, a D, another F, a D, D plus, an F, and a D. And she's given Louisiana a B. And if it was, I just saw Louisiana in the bottom 10. These are our best performing states. So I don't know, something just doesn't add up there. So let's go back to the international comparisons. How do Texas learning outcomes compare to the world? Because you just saw that Texas is very middling compared to the rest of the nation, right? 25th and 36th, if I remember correctly. But it turns out in math, Texas was only outperformed by 7 nations in the entire world. Korea, Singapore, Chinese Taipei, Hong Kong, Japan, Russia, and Quebec, Canada. Texas performed better than 34 countries in the crosswalk. Better than Finland, Italy, New Zealand, Sweden, Chile. I just said that Texas performs better in math than Finland. Is that what you're seeing on TV? Okay, let's talk about science. So in science, Texas was outperformed by only 9 countries. Those are Korea, Singapore, Chinese Taipei, Hong Kong, Japan, Russia, Finland. Finland does beat us in science on the crosswalk. But Texas performed better than 31 countries, i.e., Italy, New Zealand, Sweden, and Chile. And then the tables are here. And actually, if you go to my blog, Cloaking Inequity, there's actually a post called "Who's Smarter Than a Texan?" And so if you can't see this little teeny tiny data that I can't see, you can go to my blog, check out the post. It's one of the posts on the masthead, and you can look more carefully at this data. And there's also a link to the IES study on that post if you want to dig into how they sampled, how they crosswalked the data, et cetera. Okay. So now this is sort of experimental. One of the questions that I wanted to ask was, how does the college readiness to completion, how do we stack up against the world? So the best I could do was to look at the OECD tertiary completion data. So I'm not arguing here that this is apples to apples, but I'm going to do my best. And then what we also did was, in this particular analysis, I compared Texas to our two largest peer states, California and New York, because sometimes Texas gets compared with Kansas. That's probably not the best. I had a reporter once call me and say, well, you know, in the presidential campaign, they said Texas is way outperforming New Mexico. And I said, you know, Houston Independent School District has about the same amount of students that New Mexico has. So we want to make, you know, comparisons that for states that look similar to us, right? So so here you see, and this is where I need to go to my computer because these numbers are super small. So these are post-secondary undergraduation rates from the IPEDS, which is one of the national data sets. And what you see here is that Texas, in terms of graduation rate, just overall post-secondary graduation rate, underperforms California and New York. Now, I gave this talk at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and a state representative stood up and said, "We outperform New York." And I said, "Representative, the data actually disagrees with you." And so, so then here you see, so then the issue is we need to disaggregate these because sometimes the aggregates hide the inequities in our system. There's no doubt that we have vast inequities across our system, but it's not necessarily our public system that's failing, it's the inequities within the system that are problematic. So you see here that Texas, whether it's African Americans, whether it's Latinos, whether it's white students, that their post-secondary completion rates, California and New York, outpace Texas completion rates in the IPEDS. And then just over time, you can see here the completion rates for the different groups in Texas, and we've remained fairly stasis over the last, oops, click slide. I have to click two slides here at the same time. So you see that the completion rates are fairly stable over time with African Americans having the lowest completion rates. Latinos have bumped up a little bit over time. Click, click. Okay, so here's the sort of experimental comparison, and I'm sure folks are going to tweet at me later at Professor JVH why this comparison is terrible and horrible. But let's just look at it. So the OECD tertiary higher education graduation rates, you see here that if California and New York were countries, that they would place 6th and 7th in the world in post-secondary completion. Texas comes in at about 14th, and I'm using the same data that I used from 2 tables ago and then placing it together with the OECD data. Of course, it's not a perfect comparison, but it gives you context in which how we're performing in higher education, because I hear that there's people in Washington that want No Child Left Behind for higher education. They're telling us how bad of a job we're doing. I don't know who it is that is thinking about an accountability system for higher education, but this is how we're performing relative to other countries. So in conclusion, I gotta click the slide. Sorry, I'm clicking 2 slides here. In conclusion, in isolation, if you, as Mr. Lovelace talked about, the PISA scores typically paint a middling picture of U.S. student learning at age 15. But compared to other states, Texas is in the middle of the pack of math and science, and ACT, SAT, which actually I took out, but I do have data on that on the website if you're interested in looking at how Texas performs in the ACT and SAT, especially by race and ethnicity. Compared to the world, Texas only performs behind 7 nations in math and 9 in science. Let that sink in. That's, even though we're average compared to the nation. Compared to the world, we're doing pretty darn good, which means that Massachusetts and New York, the states that Michelle Rhee has given D's and F's to, are some of the best in the world at what they do in math and science. In sum, Texas is relatively average compared to all states in the 4th and 8th grade math and science and in higher education completion. In contrast, we perform relatively well compared to the world. Please join me at Cloaking Equity so we can continue this discussion online. You can tweet at me, at Professor JVH. I respond to almost every tweet sent in my direction. And you can also add me on Facebook or LinkedIn. I have a social media presence. I enjoy communicating with folks. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to questions.
Thank you.